on Off the Ball.
With William Hill, you can boost your winnings on every Premier League game with new Bet Builder Extra. Only with William Hill. Download the app today. 18 plus gamblingcare.ie.
This is News Talk.
You're very welcome back to Off the Ball. Kathleen McNamee here with you for the rest of the afternoon and evening in what is a very special show as we are celebrating Nollaig. So you'll only be hearing female voices on the show today. Joining me now to chat through this afternoon's FA Cup action between Manchester United and Arsenal is Scarlett Herron. Scarlett, you're very welcome.
Thanks, Kathleen.
What are we expecting from this game? I mean, we saw yesterday City winning 8-0. It's not going to be that sort of a game. It's probably the main competitive game over the weekend in terms of big teams that people will recognise.
Yeah, I suppose when you're at this stage of the Cup, it's kind of all small teams, big teams, even Spurs. I think there was like 100 and something places between one of the teams.
96, I think it
96,
was. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So yeah, it's definitely the biggest game, and both teams, probably Man United more than anything, need a win here to stay in. Obviously, it's the sort of last cup competition they're in domestically anyway. So I think in the form they're in, haven't won since they beat City. That was nearly a month ago now. So they'll really be looking to get on this competition.
It's an interesting one because I've had this conversation with a couple of people over the last few days as to what this game means for Arsenal. Because I think, as you say, for United, it's quite obvious they need a win.
Yeah.
But for Arsenal, a week where, not losing to Newcastle in the Carabao Cup, have that game against Spurs midweek in the North London derby, which is a big game. This sandwiched in the middle of it is definitely not what they need right now. And some people are saying, well, Arteta should rest a few players, there are more important games. But for me, being knocked out of the FA Cup to United, that's not a good signal for Arsenal's season, especially when you consider the fact that they're not going to win the Premier League at this stage.
Yeah, like there's such a big gap even in the league this year with Liverpool running away with it, and Arsenal really, I think for Arteta, he kind of needs to look at getting some silverware. I think they won the competition in 2020, I think.
Yeah, it's
and
been a while.
Since then he's obviously built such a great foundation, and they've been doing so well in the league campaign the last few seasons, but they've nothing to show for it. So I think, as you said, like the Arsenal sort of supporters need to sort of look at this as a chance to win some silver and sort of get a bit of a run going. I think United have knocked out the last time they've played like a holder in the competition. They've won the last two times. I think it was against City the last time. So obviously it's such a big game for Arsenal as well. But even with Saka out and the games coming thick and fast over Christmas, as you said, they won't be wanting this game to come, but they need to just take it as it comes, I suppose. And they really, I think for morale and for something to show for Arteta's tenure, I think this competition is really important. Even if they just get a run going, they don't have to win it. But I think getting knocked out at this stage, as you said, by Manchester United would be a really disappointing end.
So you would be put out as strong a team as possible?
I think so. You can't really... I understand there's injury worries for Arsenal at the minute, and there kind of always has been that sort of vibe around them the last few seasons, that they've always struggled to keep players fit. But I do think that with the sort of the history of the competition, you should always, they should be putting out a good team. Not to say that if a player isn't fully fit, or if you want to save them for the Spurs game, that you can't rest a few players, but I think putting out a strong team is definitely something that they should be looking at doing.
What have you seen from Amorim since he's came in? I mean, he's kind of made quite a lot of excuses for how the team have performed so far, saying, I haven't had enough time with them. I only get them a couple of days a week. I think this week or last week was the first time he had them properly for a full week of training. Obviously, there's so many different team issues in there, in that it's a collection of players at the moment. It's not really a cohesive unit. Yeah. But what have you seen, or is there anything that would give you hope if you're a United supporter?
I think that Liverpool game was probably the first time you've seen the United playing properly. Even when they beat City, the first half, they were all over the place. So I think the game against Liverpool was sort of the first sign of hope, I suppose, for United, and even their system working really, really well. I think the midfield partnership of Mainu and Ugarte is a lot better than what they had with maybe like Casemiro, Eriksen in there.
It's just still so bad that like that was what they were reduced to as a midfield of Casemiro and
I know,
Eriksen.
and you think that's like people are talking about that being such a bad midfield, but you look at what they've won between them and the careers they've had. But anyway, I suppose that's what United do.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's the age they're at as well, probably at this stage of their career. That shouldn't be the backbone of your team.
No, and I think that sort of youth in midfield, I think they had a crazy amount of sort of interceptions and winning of like percentage duels in the midfield against Liverpool. So I even seen on someone did a breakdown, and the way they set up against Liverpool sort of trapped their wingers like Diaz to sort of having to drop deep, and then you're winning the ball up higher in the pitch, which is really positive for United. And then their back three is kind of covered by their wing backs, obviously working really hard as well. But yeah, I think the shape is very different, especially for a Premier League team. But I think he has the right ideas, but he just doesn't have the players at the minute. Not that the players he has aren't world class, and they should be doing better with them. But it's what you said there. They're not a cohesive side. They're not really together. It's kind of a team of individuals. And I think until he can have a settled season, like off season, maybe to get a few transfers in, get some people out, I think until then, maybe next year you'll see Amorim maybe actually make a difference on the pitch in terms of results.
What sort of player do you think Manchester United needs to go after? I know there are so many areas of the pitch where they're lacking, but what do you think is the most crucial thing that Amorim needs to solve?
I think it's the whole, if you look at like United of the past, I think that's like the ideal scenario. You talk about like the Manchester United way and players in like the 90s, that 99 team, 92 team. They were just so hard working, and it was sort of the idea of like dying on the pitch. And I think the players nowadays, and this is not just Manchester United, this is other teams as well, it's players are sort of too obsessed with themselves and their own performance. They need to actually focus on their team themselves. And yeah, I don't think it's one specific area that they need to improve on. I don't think it's one player knocking everybody down. It's just sort of getting behind the idea and getting behind the manager as well, because I think in the last 5 or 6 United managers, you can see when sort of things don't go United's way, it's immediately the players' turn. And I think the whole losing the dressing room idea has killed them over the years, because it's a group of players that aren't willing to go all in to a manager at once. And I think if Amorim can sort of turn that and get everyone on board, and then, as I say, get rid of a few players that maybe are causing a bit of a negative stir, then you're sort of on the right track.
Does he have the personality for that?
I think we're yet to see. I don't know. Yeah, as you said, he's making a few excuses, but I feel sorry for him, because it's not an easy job to take on. No. And I think he has the ability as a manager. But as well as that, like Premier League football is very different to like what he had at Sporting. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. But I think it's the best appointment they've made so far out of all the managers they've picked
since Ferguson.
Yeah, I think. Don't quote me.
You've only said it on national radio now, Scarlett, so it's not like there's tens of thousands of people that can report this back to you in a year's time when he's on the chopping block.
I know. Hopefully now it happens, but I think if he sorts out the dressing room, I think they'll be successful. But
how much time should he be allowed to sort things out?
That's the thing, because I think nowadays it's like 10 games in, they've won 1 out of 10, and it's like, oh, he needs the boot, like get him out. And I get the fans turn against him. But I think if you give him 2-3 seasons, obviously I think this year's a write-off completely. I think this cup game maybe if they can get a good cup run and maybe win it again, then it will be a bit of a lift. But I think he needs, as I said, the off season and then go again next year. And I think even next year he'll need time to rebuild. So I'm given 2-3 years. I think they need to be patient with it, but I'm not sure if they'll give the time to him.
Yeah, you'd hope that they would. I mean, it's kind of very apt for today, but I always use the example of Arteta at Arsenal. And, that first year and a half wasn't great at all. It was only when he was able to kind of, I suppose, cut the likes of Aubameyang and bring in his style of football, bring in the players that he wanted, that things started to turn. But it did take a long time. I just suppose, I think if United fans were seeing some progress on the pitch, some good signings, getting Diallo to renew his contract, that's massive for them. He's going to be so key, I think, in the next couple of seasons for what they do. I don't think United fans will mind as much if the silverware isn't rolling in maybe in the way that they want it to.
Can't really get any worse, can it?
Well, that's the funny thing about United though, is you have like those big results against the likes of City. Obviously, they weren't in a great place, and that performance against Liverpool was brilliant, but they're so quickly forgotten
Yeah.
by the fans because the next day they're turning around and they're losing to someone who's in a relegation spot. So it's such a tough one to balance for them, and I don't really know. I think if they got some more consistency against those bottom half teams and were putting in decent performances against the top half,
Yeah.
and that was a consistent thing rather than going into every Manchester United game and not knowing if they're going to win 5-0 or lose 5-0, I think people will be happy.
Yeah.
Happier.
I
anyways.
agree. And even I think Amorim said after the Liverpool game, he like went into the interview and he was fuming and he was like, why haven't we performed like this for the last 6 weeks? Like, why is it today that they decide to show up, sort of thing? And I think that is the big thing. And even for any sort of sports person or like footballer, it's always harder to get hyped up for the smaller games, but then they're the ones that you can kind of slip up in, as United have been doing. So, I think like he has a tough job in a sense. Like like you can't sit there and say that he is like this world class group and he should be winning this after a year and da da da. Like it's a really tough job at the minute, especially with all the backlash they're getting. But I do think if he gets time, he can I think he can take United back to a place where the fans want to go to Old Trafford. But I think for that to happen, you kind of need to look at the infrastructure of Old Trafford as well. Like there's a lot of things going on there at the minute. So it's a really tough job to take at this time. But I do think given the time, he can sort of change the ways that United are going at the minute. And even like you're looking at Diallo, like that's exactly the sort of player you'd want in, like a player that is sort of willing to do anything for the manager, do anything for the team, the crest sort of thing. And if you can get players like him around him, and players that suit the style of play, like you look now, like they don't have a striker that suits it. Like I think, like I did feel sorry for Xerxes. I don't know what game that was. He got whipped off after 30 minutes. Was getting Newcastle maybe.
Newcastle, I think.
Like, and the fans booing him. Like it's an awful place to be for him. But I just don't think he's not the striker they need. I don't think Hoyland is either. And it's just like I suppose getting the players that suit the style as well.
If you were to bring in someone from another team to fill that role, what sort of style of player would you be looking at?
God, that's a really good question, and I haven't thought of it. But I think every team in the league right now would look at like an Isaac and think you could transform whatever team you go into in the Premier League. And I was having a conversation with a few of my friends the other day, and we were saying if Isaac was at Arsenal, would they win the league? Because it's sort of they've been missing that 100%. Out and out striker for years, and it would just make such a difference. I think if you're looking at the likes of Chris Wood even having such a great season, it's so dependent on the environment you're in. Like Chris Wood failed at so many other, not failed, but didn't live up to his potential at so many other clubs, and all of a sudden he gets into a team that like Nuno believes in him, and they're sort of playing to his strengths of a tall, strong striker. And all of a sudden he's having the season of his career. So it all just depends on who's the right striker for that environment. And at the minute, it's, as I say, it would be a hard place for any striker to come into.
It's a hard club to attract people to at the moment.
At the minute, yeah. And that's not the way it should be. Like it should be it should be one of them things that if Man United come calling you drop everything and go out. But it's not the way it is at the minute. But I think it will improve, but I think this is near rock bottom at the minute.
I feel like every Manchester United fan says that, and then the next week something else happens and
it gets worse.
It gets worse. So where are the key battles that we're going to see today?
I think the midfield will be a very key area. Obviously, I think Rice will have his work cut out from with Diallo. I don't know. As well, I think that Arsenal's wingers need to be a bit more direct if they want to, obviously with United's sort of setup at times when they have the five at the back. Like I think Dallow's been brilliant for them, especially since Amorim's come in. So I think the likes of Arsenal's wingers, whoever, I don't know who he's going to play, Martinelli, Trossard, whoever, I think they'll have the work cut out for them. Even with Missouri, I think he's playing quite well. I think Arsenal will probably be the team to... I think they will come out on top in this game. But I think if United can play, I like the game to Liverpool, sort of overloading that midfield and really putting a lot of pressure on in the middle. Obviously, we don't know what either team's lining up like, but I think Byminder is going to start in goal for United. It should be interesting to see. And I also think that, on United, I think Lenny Yarrow is going to be someone to look out for, and I think he might get a game today. So,
what have you seen or heard about him that makes you think that?
Well, against Liverpool, he just came on and I just thought he was brilliant. He's sort of that, whatever, like he's the perfect centre half that you're looking for, like tall, good on the ball, really like sort of persistent in his play. Like I think he's a really, really great sign. Obviously, I think he was injured for a while there, but I think he's a young player. Obviously, came from Lille, so I really do think he'll be great going forward for United and sort of that centre half that you need. And I think he's perfect as well for the three. Sort of having players behind him like DeLate or whatever. So I think that back three could be looking at improving massively, especially if he can get more minutes, especially in the Premier League, just getting used to the whole setup, because obviously it's a big transition coming into the league when you don't really know the way it's the strikers in the league or whatever. So he'll have a lot to learn, but I think with a bit of guidance, obviously DeLate's not that too long in the league either, but I think with a bit of guidance he'll be really, really good for United going forward.
It's interesting. Turning out to be a long day at the office for Tottenham. It's still 0-0 there.
Oh God.
55 minutes gone against Tamworth. It's 1-1 between Hull City and Doncaster Rovers in the other match that was on earlier today. We're going to look at a bit of the women's game as well. Obviously, we're in a break from the WSL at the moment, so we have Women's FA Cup is on. London City Lionesses are up 5-0 against Fulham. It's 0-0 between Newcastle and Nottingham. City only 1-0 up against Ipswich, so that'll be interesting how that goes. And then Sunderland are 4-1 up against Exeter City. A lot of those games today have been called off because of the hard ground. We saw recently Leo O'Leary, under-19s captain, signing for Bristol City. We were starved of her coming up against Katie McCabe potentially today because that game was called off. But brilliant to see another young Irish player getting the move. Yeah,
it's class. And like Leah's been so consistent over the last few years, and even her Euros campaign was brilliant with the 19s as well. So yeah, it's so well deserved for her. She's such like a niche talent as well. She sort of has that wing, like that winger sort of, that technical ability, able to just skip by players, and she has then the speed to sort of get up with it and just like breeze past defenders. Like obviously playing with her, it's been great. Like if you're ever in a rut, like just give it out and she'll probably beat 3 players and with a ball in the box. And it's a great move for her, and it's really deserved. She's been brilliant the last few years, so yeah, I really hope it goes well for her. And I was really looking forward because I think she was in the squad for the game.
Yeah.
And even if she had got on for a few minutes, it would have been cool to see sort of the young and old of the left hand side.
Yeah, that would have actually, I didn't even think about the positioning of the two of them. I just thought it would be funny seeing the two of them go up against each other. We will have an episode of the Koi Gig podcast this week chatting to Leah, so we'll hear a little bit more about her journey and how she has found it. What are your expectations for the second half of the WSL?
Well, I think Chelsea and City are obviously going to be the ones to sort of run off, and I think Chelsea will sort of run away with it again, and there's just such a huge gap between the two of them and everyone else. I think the relegation battle is probably the thing that's going to keep most people entertained in the league. Obviously there's a good few teams in it, and it's sort of that idea that one win could jump you about 4 places up the table. So it'll be interesting to see. I think a few teams have done quite well in the window. There hasn't been too much movement, just a few loan moves here and there.
No.
I think Sam Kerr is a good signing for Liverpool. I think everyone who's seen that headline kind of jumped for a second. It was
What? There was that really funny tweet that went all over like women's football Twitter of the guy being like, you know, I'm a United fan, don't really follow the women's game, but like, bloody hell, like Sam Kerr, she not the best player in the world. That's some business. And I very much enjoyed the reaction to it. It was quite funny.
Yeah, and I seen that Spider-Man meme as well.
Yeah,
it's like Sam Kerr. It's funny. But yeah. And I think she's a good sign for Liverpool. Liverpool are actually quite strong in midfield, like with Holminger and Kerry Holland. So I think that's just strengthening in there, which is good for them. Everton have made a few signs as well, but like they need a striker or someone to score goals. Oh my God.
I saw Courtney Brosnan is like second in the league for most saves made so far. And I was like, that's absolutely no surprise. She's the only reason that Everton aren't doing worse than they already are at the moment. I think I thought was quite interesting. Hayley Ladd made that move from United to Everton, and a lot of United fans were quite unhappy with it and saying that they feel there's a bit of a trend with their players at the moment that their stalwarts are being let go or they're leaving the club and there's no kind of fanfare made about it, or you know, they're not given the opportunity to kind of have their goodbye moment. Which I thought was quite interesting.
I actually haven't seen anything of that, but I think even we talked about in the Koi Gig pod the sort of having to United need to start retaining their players and getting their contracts sorted out. So yeah, I'd say that is a bit of a concern for United fans. You're kind of left in a bit of unknown, and even for players that are such servants to the club, fans will want an opportunity to say goodbye to them. But I guess that's just the nature of football, and like it's the nature of the January window. And obviously there's a break in the WSL, which there isn't in the men's, so it's probably more of an issue than in the men's game. But yeah, I think there's been a few issues of that, even with the men's United team, that players didn't get a chance to say goodbye or maybe weren't recognised as much when they left the club. I know there was that whole thing with Jesse Lingard when he left, that he felt that he deserved more of a goodbye and for his service to the club since he was there since he was young. So yeah, that's interesting actually.
Good bit of business for them though in getting that 1-year contract extension for Grace Clinton.
Yeah, that's huge. Karen Duggan is going to be on the beer tonight. Should be buzzing. No, that's brilliant. Obviously she's been class for them this year. Sort of running that midfield, popping up with goals, and obviously her defensive duties as well. I talk about the United press and sort of how powerful it is when it works for them, and she's obviously such a big part of that as well. So just giving that energy to that United team, she's been so important this year. And a great news for any United fans.
Yeah, I mean, it seems stupid to say this in January, but it does feel like the title race is wrapped up pretty much with Chelsea. You know, there was that massive question mark over Bompasta coming in and if she could build on what Emma Hayes had done, and she's kind of gone beyond that.
Yeah, like I don't think anyone expected. Obviously she was so successful when she was in France, but to come in
a very different league.
To come into a new league like the WSL, to the unknown, and do so well so quickly is astonishing. What was it? She won 7 out of 7 of her first game.
Yeah, she's already beaten Emma Hayes' record for win streaks, which is mad.
Mad. It's a credit to her, and obviously to have the likes of Sam Kerr injured as well during all this, and to have a few injuries is bonkers. But I think we can kind of call it the race there, unless there's a massive slip, which I can't see happening. But even last year, when Chelsea sort of slipped away at the end of the year, and Emma Hayes even thought it was over. So you never know. It's always alive. But I think with even the quality they have off the bench and the squad depth they have, I can't even see major injuries sort of creeping in or causing any sort of negative effect to their team, because they just have such quality in the squad to come on if anyone gets injured. So.
Oh, well, like any other club, if you were to lose the talent of Sam Kerr, and Australian Sam Kerr this is, the actual one of the best players in the world, it would have such a mad ripple effect throughout the squad. But we don't even really talk about her anymore. You know, she's out of sight, out of mind, and it hasn't made any difference to the way that Chelsea have conducted themselves. And admittedly, like, Emma Hayes did leave a brilliant squad there, but at the same time, you have to be able to take that on. And we saw how tired Chelsea looked at the end of last year, and they're just a totally different team now. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the season goes. Yeah. Scarlett, thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoy the rest of the FA Cup action. Still no score between Tamworth and Tottenham, so we will keep you updated.